Wizard, starring Johnny Harris. Please welcome Johnny Harris.
So, my mom is with that group, MAD, right? Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. You heard of them, right? And I said to her, Mom, I think what you should do is let the dads in on the action, too. And that way you could call it Fathers and Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. And that way you could say, yeah, we used to be mad, now we're effing mad. Right? Yeah. Little edgier, right? Well, the thing is, I don't know if my dad would go. He's always on the booze. No, it's a real problem. He's like a chocoholic, only not with chocolate, with alcohol. Myself, I don't drink very much because I find it very hard on my stomach. Last summer, we went down to one of these all-inclusive resorts. You know, these deals where they have the free bar in the swimming pool? I swam up to the bar and, needless to say, ended up with a watery stool. I also made a bit of an unfortunate realization while I was in there. There I am with 7 other guys, and we're drinking for several hours, and it dawns on me that no one has gotten out to use the bathroom. And I realized 7/8 of the urine in the pool is not mine. I told my mom I wanted to be born again. She said that would tear her apart. My dad is a philosophy professor, true story. And I grew up in a small town in Newfoundland, so it was kind of weird being the son of a philosophy prof. When me and my buddies got caught smoking, they got grounded. I had to stay in my room until I could prove I existed. Although being a philosophy prof's son wasn't always bad. It did have some bonuses. Like, I remember one time in grade 4, I was being bullied by a kid who called me an arsehole. And I was able to refute him by saying, how can I be an arsehole? A hole is nothing. And then he wrapped my underwear over my forehead and kicked that nothing a whole lot. Because where I grew up, kids were tough, you know? Which is why I always find it strange when you see an adult to tell a kid to tell a bully, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Really? That could be considered giving the bully advice. Right? On how or how not to hurt you. If I had said that to a kid in my town, he would have been, oh, names will never hurt you. Well, I've been wasting my time. But you said sticks, right? You said sticks. You don't want to point out to somebody how to hurt you, right? Might as well say, sticks and stones will break my bones, and I've got a wicked peanut allergy. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but a Snickers bar will kill me. I moved to Toronto from Newfoundland about 3 years ago, and I really love Toronto. Toronto gets a bad rap, you know? With the rest of Canada, they say it's unfriendly. I don't think that that's fair. I think if you move here from a smaller town, you're going to encounter cultural differences, right? Like a city of this size, this many people, this many ethnicities, there's just cultural differences that you're going to come across, even in the way that you greet somebody. Like out east, we often greet someone with a nod and a wink, right? We do, you know, what's that, right? In Newfoundland particularly, we'll cock it off to the side, right? We'll do a, you know, a little, oh, one of those, right? And just here in Toronto, it's just a little bit different again, right? It's one like, right? Cultural differences they have to get used to. Like, I find it fascinating how here in Toronto, people will order pizza by the whole and eat it sober. Although they have snarky bums here in Toronto, and I don't like that, and I don't think I'll ever get used to that. I came out of the Eaton Centre, and this guy asked me for some change, and I had a handful, so I just give it to him. He starts picking out pennies and nickels and throwing them in the street. Anything less than a quarter. So I gave him a bit of a look, right? And he looks at me and he says, "What? You think you're better than me?" I said, "I think I'm doing better than you." No, it's bad, because no sooner do I turn away from that guy, there's another guy, and he asked me for money, and I know this is not the right thing to do. I gave him money to beat up the first guy. The more time I spend in Toronto, I become a little bit Torontoized, right? So it's a good head check when I get back to Newfoundland every now and then. I was there last month, and I went into a coffee shop, and I said to the kid, "Excuse me, do you do a Frappuccino?" And he said, "No, do you do other fellas in the rear?" I said, "Okay, rum and coke, right." I have forgotten myself. Another funny thing about Toronto is that Prince lives here. Prince manages to sleep with so many beautiful women, and I don't really get that, right? Women they go crazy for Prince. But I've always thought of him as being sort of like small, feminine, wears a lot of makeup. In a weird way, he's my ideal woman, right? Which made it the cruelest of ironies when he slept with my girlfriend in Toronto. Let me tell you, walking in on that was very weird, you know? Because I walked in, it's like, "Baby, what are you doing?" "Who's your girlfriend?" "With the mustache." "Prince?" Suffice to say that relationship did not go very far. And I found myself online, surfing the web looking for dating tips. I'm not bragging, that's just what I ended up doing. But you know what I found out there? I found out that strawberries are an aphrodisiac, right? They're supposed to heighten sexual arousal. So apparently is passion fruit, hence the name. But do you know which fruit women find absolutely irresistible? Prince. Come on, guys. Come on, you're not... You have a chance to learn from my mistake here, right? You know? I'm not saying that your wives and girlfriends are the cheating kind. I'm just saying, if you're not watching Prince live, you don't know where he is. And he's never really impressed me that much as a lyricist, you know? Like Purple Rain, Little Red Corvette. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm colorblind, but he never really did it for me. But you know what? There's a lot of weird lyrics out there in rock and roll. In fact, I often think that perhaps the least thought out lyric in rock and roll history would have to be Thin Lizzy's Jailbreak, right? Thin Lizzy do a song, Jailbreak, and it goes, "Tonight there's gonna be a jailbreak somewhere in the town." Right? Oh, good, smart bone. I'll hazard a guess as to where the jailbreak will occur. I don't want to sound cryptic, but the answer is in the question, isn't it? There's a lot of weird lyrics. Like Phil Collins sings that song. He says, "If you follow me, I will follow you." Right? If you think about it, they're just going to bump into each other, aren't they? Tom Waits does a song called The Ice Cream Man. Very sexy, very seductive sort of song, right? He sings, "I'm the ice cream man, baby, and I'll be good to you." It's a pretty good song. I just don't get the sex appeal of the ice cream man, right? It's not exactly a highly skilled profession, and they're not really, you know... And I think girls know that, right? Girls know that he's making 15 cents commission on every fudgesicle. I just think if I wanted to write a really sexy, seductive song, I would not make my protagonist an ice cream man. That's all I'm saying. Someone who really can only offer a woman a free ice cream. But really, it's gonna end up coming out of his pocket because Dickie D's keeps some pretty tight books, I know. Well, I'm certainly no Romeo. I was seeing a girl for some time, it was going quite well, and then, I don't know, it all started, she decided she was gonna take birth control pill, right? And she started taking, some of the gals might know this brand, tricycline, right? So she started taking tricycline, but she started gaining weight. So I said, tricycline. It didn't go over too good. In an effort to make it up to her, I went out and I bought her this really nice, expensive, ancient Chinese formula body massage oil that is not only supposed to penetrate and soothe your muscles, but also supposed to realign your life energy, and you can eat it off each other's bits. But it didn't work, and she broke up with me. No, it's okay, it's okay. Although I did really like this girl, which is, you know, like, she made me want to, okay, have you ever seen the movie As Good As It Gets, right? Jack Nicholson falls in love with Helen Hunt, and there towards the end of the film, he says, "You make me want to be a better man." I don't know if I'd go so far as to say that with this girl, but she definitely made me want to not fart in my sleep. And I think that counts for something, right? But a lot of couples get to this point. I think we just got to the point where we would argue about everything. We'd argue about everything. Like, I remember this one fight we had. Maybe I shouldn't even drag this up, but you know what? I think if I just let you in on this little argument that we had, I'm positive that you'll agree with me and I'll have some vindication, all right? So we had this, condoms, all right? Condoms are made out of latex, right? Which is a type of rubber, right? Which is a form of polymer, which is like plastic, right? So used condoms don't go in the garbage, they go in the recycling. Am I right? Right, yes, they do. I knew it. Anyway, the long and the short of it is we broke up. But you know what? I saw her a couple of weeks later, and now she has a nose ring. And that almost made it easier for me, because call me old-fashioned, I've never really been able to get into the nose ring, right? For me, a nose ring is this nice, shiny, decorative thing just in the wrong place, right? For me, a nose ring has the same aesthetic as a cat passing tinsel. I think part of my problem with the ladies right now is that I'm just not very good at being sexy, right? Some people can. Some people can just throw it on, right? And whenever I try to be sexy, I get it all backwards. Like, you know how when people go to make a sexy face, right? They make the sexy face, they squint their eyes and they bite their bottom lip, you know? Right? They make that sexy face. But I always tend to widen my eyes and bite my top lip. And I feel like I should be out there. I feel like I should be getting into the game, right? And because, you know, I say to myself, Johnny, you're still young. You gotta get out there and stuff. And this is gonna sound weird, but one of the reasons that I feel like I should be trying to get some action is because I believe I have the good fortune of living in a time in history when women's genitals are so beautifully groomed, right? Right? Women really clean up down there nowadays, right? Which is great. There's like waxing and trimming and shaving. Some gals will shave the whole thing, and I think that's great. And I'm not being a perv when I say that, really. Like, no, I'm not, because some girls, you know, think that they say, "Oh, why would you want me to shave the whole thing? Well, you want me to look like a little girl?" That's got nothing to do with it. No. That's got nothing to do with it. It's simply a matter of accessibility, right? Like, ladies, if you want us to put in a bit of FaceTime, then it just makes everything so much easier. Like when I was a teenager and we were first starting to fool around and get into that stuff, there was no trimming, hedging, cutting. It's like a conservation forest down there, right? And it was awful because you're young and you're insecure and you don't really know what you're doing. You go down there and you're faced with that and you're pushing it one way and you're parting it the other way. Sometimes I find myself reaching up and taking bobby pins out of her hair and trying to try to section off a work area, right? Try to section off a work area. Ironically, the one area where girls will most often leave some hair is the little strip right at the top. That one little strip right at the top, right? It's called the landing strip, right? It's called the landing strip. But really, that's exactly where, like, that's where we land, really. Like, that's the one spot that we need it gone, really. If you're thinking landing strip, think less plane, think more helicopter. We need a clearing. Right? We need a clearing landing. In fact, I think it would be cool if girls only just shaved that one spot, right? Like have one bald spot right in the middle with a ring of hair around it. You call it the friar tuck, right? Shaved genitals is great. It makes everything simpler. I'd shave mine. If a girl wanted me, you wouldn't have to ask me twice. If it meant a few trips down south, excellent. I'm not gonna be precious about it, right? But I think that's probably a guy thing, right? We're not gonna feel too precious about our short and curlies, right? I mean, there's probably not a lot of guys who have shaved their scrotum and then spent 20 minutes in the mirror going, oh God, oh, what have I done? What have I done? Oh, it's just hair. It'll grow back. It's just hair. It'll grow back. In an effort to get back into the scene, I went on an online dating site. And I'm not embarrassed to say that. I think a lot of people are doing it now. But I couldn't get past the questionnaire. They ask you all these questions about yourself, right? There's like, what are your hobbies? What are your interests? What would you like to do on a first date, right? And then it says, do you smoke? And it gives you a myriad of options to choose from, right? You can say, lightly, heavily, regularly, when I'm drinking, socially, yada, yada, yada. And then it says, and it only allows you to click on yes or no for this next one. It says, do you do drugs? Right? I don't think that's a yes or no question, is it? I mean, if you smoke a joint from time to time, does that mean you do drugs, right? Like, if you ever drank 3 Neo-Citron for a laugh? Does that mean you are a drug user, right? It just uses the term drugs in a very absolute way, right? Like the way that your mom would, right? Or at least the way that my mom would. You know, for my mom, drugs are drugs, and drugs are bad. One drug is just as bad as the other drug, and that's it, drugs. Like one time I was home from college, and she found a pack of rolling papers in my jacket. Well, I might as well have run up to her with a syringe of heroin and jabbed it into my eyeball. She's running around the house with a pack of zigzags going, oh, Jonathan's on drugs. Johnny's on drugs. Peter, what do we do? Oh, get my Valium. Quick, get my Valium. Where is it? It's in the wine. I crushed it into the wine. Bring me the wine with the Valium in it. So I didn't know what to click on. So the only option I could think of was, like, go right to hell with it and try to be funny, right? Do you do drugs? Yes. What are your interests? Drugs. What would you like to do on a first date? Drugs. I haven't got much action from that website yet. I find a lot of the time it's the guys you least expect who are getting the action too, right? Like Prince. But not just Prince, like, I don't know, like Tiger Woods. Honestly, I mean, I know that he's a great athlete, very successful, but, you know, he's sort of got that nerdy quality about him, doesn't he? I certainly didn't expect that he was sticking his one wood in every hole he could come across, right? And then with the fallout of that scandal, he lost so much money because so many endorsements were dropped, right? But you know what? I have a bit of a conspiracist's mind, and I think that in Tiger's defense, it might have been the companies that sponsored him and their slogans that subliminally drove Tiger to sleep with so many women, right? Let's just take a look at the top 5, all right? Gatorade, is it in you? Right? Nike, just do it. Right? American Express, do more. General Motors, hard as a rock. And last but definitely not least, Titleist, who make his golf equipment, serious balls for serious players. You know, I've been following this dangerous dogs debate. You know how, pit bulls are illegal in Ontario. They're illegal in many places in the world right now. And it's an interesting dilemma. Like, a lot of people who support these breeds, what they call fighting breeds, Dobermans, Rottweilers, and yada, 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 they say there's no such thing as a bad dog, just a bad dog owner. Meaning that a dog will only turn vicious if it's improperly cared for, right? If it's not loved. However, people who own these breeds also customarily cut the dog's tail off. Which doesn't seem like the most loving gesture that you could make. But that's what's fashionable amongst these breeds. I'm not sure who decided that. I don't know who first looked at a Doberman and was like, oh yes, nice, sleek, muscular physique, nice, shiny black coat. Too bad you can't see his butthole there. It's sort of obscured by the tail, isn't it, right? Too bad we can't see that starfish all the time. Oh, wait, I've got a great idea. Snip, there we go. There's that button. There's that button we've been missing there. I guess we don't need this part anymore. There we go, look. Oh, look, he's chasing his tail. How cute, how cute. And the ears, too. People who own pit bulls also cut the ears off. I mean, not the whole ear, but they, like, trim off the top. It's like, Jesus, man, it's not a hedge. You can't just go cutting parts off your dog willy-nilly, right? It's not a chia pet. It's a pet. Like, you don't see somebody who owns a wiener dog thinking like, oh yeah, he looks like a wiener now, but if I cut the legs off, right? Put a wavy mustard streak down his back and call him Frank, it'll really be like a wiener. I like to wreak havoc on the microphone, because really, what else are you gonna wreak, right? Wreak and havoc are two words that pretty much exclusively go together. Whenever anybody wreaks anything, it's almost always havoc. And whenever havoc occurs, 9 times out of 10, somebody wreaked it, right? I guess wreak means to make and bring, but you can't show up at a potluck and be like, oh, I wreaked honey garlic wings. So the province of Newfoundland and Labrador just bought a submarine from the Canadian government. The Canadian military are getting rid of all their old submarines, and the province just bought one for $4. It's gotta be worth more than that, right? It's a submarine. Even if you're just buying it for parts, right? For your other submarine, right? But they got some more coming up for sale. I'm thinking about buying one. Right? I think I could save up for that. I thought that's what after the show tonight, I'm not gonna go for a beer. I'm gonna save that money and buy a Canadian submarine. Why would I buy an outdated Canadian military submarine? Because I don't need a top-of-the-line one. Right? I'm from Newfoundland, living on the mainland. It would just be a beater for getting back and forth. Who knows? If I ever moved back home, I could probably still get $250 back for it. Right? And it might impress girls, right? Imagine a girl comes up at a party and she's like, oh, what do you drive? Oh, funny you should ask. An Oberon-class submarine. Take her for a spin around St. John's Harbor. Have a look at the city lights for the periscope. Do you wanna get back in the torpedo bay? I think that would be pretty cool. It's pretty cool to have submarine. And that way, the odd time when somebody comes up to me and says, hey, you're a comedian, right? I could say, amongst other things, like Submariner. All right, let's get the show started. Show of hands, irritable bowel syndrome. Irritable bowel syndrome? Brave lad, brave man over here. Irritable bowel syndrome is a terrible affliction. There's a lot of gas, a lot of cramping, a lot of very violent Best word to sum it up, explosive, right? But the worst thing about irritable bowel syndrome is that a lot of doctors don't believe that it's a real condition. They think it's simply a neuroses on the part of the patient and that there's actually nothing wrong with you, okay? Let me tell you something. If you fart, okay? And you can smell it, and you are on a motorcycle traveling 100 kilometers an hour, there's something wrong with you, right? I was riding up the highway on my motorbike and I broke wind, and about 4 seconds later I was like, well, what? No, it cannot be, right? Because think about it. If you break wind at 100 kilometers an hour, 4 seconds later, you're about 80 feet away from where you broke the wind, right? And that's troubling for a couple of reasons. First of all, it means that the fart is traveling at a speed equal to or greater than 100 kilometers an hour, right? And in this country, that's illegal. Secondly, given the fact that a gas will naturally expand in all directions equally, at the same time the outer ring caught up to me 80 feet ahead, presumably it could be hitting somebody up to 160 feet behind me, right? That basically gives you a 251 diameter kill zone. Anybody at the core of the blast would be killed instantly. Anybody at the outer ring might survive, but their children will have deformations for generations to come. No, but it is a serious condition, and you know, it's embarrassing, right? Like, you know, if somebody goes into the bathroom just after I've come out, it's embarrassing because when they go in, it's not like it's not like how off-putting. How off-putting. I think Johnny may have done a number 2 in here. No. It's like, is there a corpse in the drywall? What? Are there Martians screwing in the tub? What? God's green earth is going. Sometimes it breaks the boundaries of reality how bad it is, right? One time I was watching Matlock and I farted and he didn't solve the case. Did anybody see that documentary about the killer whale? This killer whale in BC that died? It swam into the propeller of a tugboat. And it was pretty awful. And it's too bad because a couple of weeks earlier they wanted to relocate the whale, but a native group protested the move, saying that the whale actually embodied the spirit of their former band chief who died smacking his head on a ceiling fan. I got some exciting news. Last month, I got a Firebird. Firebird is my pet name for syphilis. Oh, good. Good. Sometimes I tell that joke and people don't laugh, and I think, oh, God, they got syphilis. So it's good to know that you don't. Or at least that if you do, you have a sense of humor about it. So. Okay, show of feet, restless leg syndrome. Restless leg syndrome? Right back here, restless leg syndrome is a terrible affliction. It's characterized by an uncontrollable urge to move your leg back and forth in your sleep, right? It's bad because we don't get proper rest. As soon as we fall asleep, we're like a dog with a tick, right? And it can cause many problems, like in relationships. I don't want to go into the details, but let's just say every now and then when I see an attractive woman, I think to myself, oh man, I'd kick her out of bed. And other scenarios too. One time I went down to the beach and I was in the water in one of these inflatable armchairs, and I fell asleep and I woke up doing 12 knots for the Bay of Fundy. Okay, so I was watching the World Cup final with 2 of my buddies, right? And one of them is from Spain, so he's chanting, ole, 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 right? My other buddy, he's part Dutch, so he's chanting, hup, hup, Holland, hup, hup. Right, I'm more of a hockey fan, so I kept chanting, get up, pussy. You're not hurt. You're not that hurt. I love the game, don't get me wrong, I love the game. I think it's because the World Cup started right after we had 2 months of Stanley Cup playoffs. So, you know, you're watching a guy get a puck in the mouth, lose 3 teeth, get it stitched up, and he plays the next period. So then when you're watching these guys, you know, flop around on the grass, sometimes it can be a little hard to take, right? Like, I was watching the soccer a couple of weeks ago, and they came out with a stretcher, and I was like, oh my, Jesus, what happened, right? Because, you know, in a hockey game, if you see a stretcher, someone's career is over, right? In this game, turns out the guy had a Charlie horse, right? Come on, he has a cramp, right? And everybody's getting all out of sorts. His teammates are all gathered around, and they lift up his leg, and, you know, they give his thigh a stretch. The guy's making a face like they're digging a friggin' bullet out of his leg, right? You know, and then the team medic or whatever comes out, and he's spraying the can of Alberto Extra Hold or something on it, right? It's like, I'm hoping that'll work for some reason, right? And they always grab their shin. That's what drives me crazy. When soccer players dive, they grab the shin. The only protective gear they wear are shin guards. Is no one else clued into this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills when I'm watching it. Like, that's the only part of your body I know you didn't really hurt. I think if soccer players are gonna fake it, they should pretend that they get hurt in the crotch, right? And that's not cheap, that's smart. And I'll tell you why. Because if you pretend you get hit in the crotch, the male contingent of the audience will at least give you the benefit of the doubt, right? If I see 2 soccer players collide, one guy goes down and he's grabbing his crotch, I'm thinking, that's weird. It didn't look like he got hit in the nuts, but if he did, I know what that's like. Give him a minute. And the player could really sell it, right? He could really say, you know, spit up a little bit, you know, spit up. Maybe do the kneading thing, you know, that kneading move? You know, where you're kneading your abdomen, you know, it's like you're trying to pop one back down, right? You know what I'm talking about? Do that. People would get on board with you. I would be. I'd be like, oh my God, he's kneading his abdomen, he's trying to pop one back down. Where's the goddamn stretcher? Someone get on a stretcher. Someone spray the hairspray on his balls. No, it's no use. He shaved his scrotum. I was on a flight a couple of weeks ago, had a bit of a disconcerting moment on the plane. I get to the airport, we get on the plane, we taxi out to the runway, all normal. Then we're just sitting there on the runway for, I don't know, like more than 45 minutes, right? And finally, the pilot comes on and he says, this is what he says, there's something wrong with the plane. We're gonna turn it off and turn it back on. Right? I'm thinking, Jesus, man, it's not a Nintendo. You might as well say, oh, there's something wrong with the plane. We're gonna pop the cartridge out and blow in it and see if that works. I got these friends, they're a couple, and they're always bragging to me because they've had sex on the airplane, right? So they say that they're part of the Mile High Club, right? I think somebody got it wrong over there. Anyway, so they keep saying that they're part of the Mile High Club, and they brag about it, and it drives me crazy. But I got an idea about how I can one-up them, all right? Because I got a feeling that over the next few years, space tourism is really gonna take off, right? And that's where I'm gonna make my mark. That's where I'm gonna do it. And then I will have ultimate bragging rights, right? Could you imagine someone comes up to you and is like, oh yeah, I'm in the Mile High Club. Yeah? I'm in the orbital bone zone. The day before I flew to Toronto, when I was moving here, there about 3 years ago, was the day that they discovered that Toronto had its own terrorist cell. Do you remember this? Right? Toronto had its own terrorist cell, and part of their mandate was to kidnap Stephen Harper and cut his head off. Right? No. I don't care what your religious or political beliefs are. You're not getting anywhere by cutting off Stephen Harper's head, okay? Because it's just gonna grow back. That's the kind of alien he is. But there's a lot of thinking that I don't understand with the terrorists. And, like, for example, this whole 40 virgins bit, right? That's something that they tell to the young lads that they want to become suicide bombers. They say, you know, if you murder yourself, then in the afterlife, you get 40 virgins. 40 virgins doesn't sound like that much fun to me. 40 virgins sounds like there's going to be a lot of training involved, right? Do you know what I'm getting at, right? 40 virgins, that's over 1,200 teeth that don't really know what they're doing. Right? I just can't help think that, like, if I was going to do that, I would try to tweak my order a little bit, right? I think I would say, like, okay, if I'm going to strap friggin' dynamite to myself and obliterate myself for my religion, I want 39 virgins and 1 total skank. Right? Who will do anything, right? Or maybe you could totally shuffle it up, right? Maybe you could be like, oh, yes, I would like 10 virgins, a farmer's daughter, a couple of college co-eds, a real snotty rich girl who's just slumming with me to piss off her dad, 5 strippers, a contortionist, a pair of twins, a lifeguard, a librarian, an old-fashioned school marm, and a PlayStation 3. Or actually, hey, now, we are talking about all of eternity, right? Maybe just the skank and the PlayStation 3. Did you know that the Pentagon approved a $1 billion plan to develop insect cyborgs? It's true. A $1 billion plan to develop insect cyborgs. These are insects that are hardwired with remote control and tracking technology to use against their enemies in the Middle East, right? Too bad that after all that money and all that work, turns out the Taliban are screen door capable. So it was a waste of $1 billion. You know, I wish they would just find Osama bin Laden, right? If they found him, that would have to be the TSN turning point of the war, wouldn't it, right? But after all these years, they still can't find him, which I find odd because he's a big, tall bastard, right? And he's very sick. The last I read, he's on dialysis, right? But they can't find him, and he keeps dropping a video every now and then, right? Just to taunt us. Just to taunt us. And they look at the video, and there he is in the cave, and they know he's in the cave. He's hiding in the caves. Well, what we think is this region, so it could be this cave. We'll send the team into the cave. The team checks the cave. No, he wasn't in that cave. They can't find the cave, right? Now, I'm no military strategist, but between us and the Americans, we've got about 250,000 troops over there right now. Everyone take a cave. Everyone take a cave. Whoever finds a 7-foot man with a long beard hooked up to a dialysis machine, hooked up to a Honda generator, right? Turn off the generator. And do you ever notice in Osama's videos how he always happens to have the rocket launcher leaned up, or an AK-47 or something like that leaned up? That's not coincidence. That's because political leaders in the Middle East are a little more gangster than they are over here, right? Like, think about it. It was nothing to see Saddam inspecting the troops, right? He notices there was a camera on him, and he'll take the AK-47 and shoot off a few rounds, right? You know, they use weaponry to show that they're bringing a serious game. It would never fly over here, would it, right? You're never going to see Dalton McGuinty bringing down a budget with a Mac 11, right? It's just preposterous. But over there, that's how they roll, right? That's how they roll. I used to like it when Saddam would come out. So, do you remember when Saddam would come out, the little balcony? He had his own little, like, Pope balcony, right? And Saddam would come out there to do speeches, right? And you know what I mean? He'd have the khakis on and the Tilly hat folded up on one side with the rifle. Do you know what I mean? That's Saddam, right? If you were going to buy the action figure, it would be Safari Saddam, right? and he would come out there with that getup, and he would take a rifle in one hand. And for anyone who's shot a rifle, that's not easy to do. He would take a rifle in one hand, and he would palm it, and from the hip, like John Wayne said, he'd just crack off a few rounds. He's supposed to be giving a speech. Why is he shooting a gun? Just to ramp up the crowd, I guess, right? Terrible man, unbelievable showman. Right, he was his own opening act. Really. He's like, yeah, I'll get to the speech. First of all, welcome to the gun show. Get the fuck out of my airspace. The guy had some swagger, is all I'm saying, right? Like, they brought him to court then, and he just totally undermined the authority of the judge, didn't he, right? There he is on charges of war crimes, and he stands up and he says, I don't recognize this court, and he walks out. And I tried that one time with a speeding ticket. Right? Only time I've ever been to court, and I was thinking, like, I got this nailed. I'm gonna do the Saddam defense. I'm gonna plead insanity. And I get in there, and they read out the charge. They're like, hey, Johnny Harris, doing 80 and a 50, blah, blah, blah. And I stand up, and I put this sort of confused look on my face. I didn't do it quite right. I was like, and I looked around the room, and I was like, wait a minute. I don't recognize this court. And I walked out. They did bring me back in. Yeah. I read somewhere that cats will nap for 20 hours out of the day. And I believe it, too. But they're so arbitrary about it, which cracks me up. Like, a couple of weeks ago, my cat wakes up on the bed, he looks completely freaked out, jumps off the bed, runs out to the kitchen, lies down, back to sleep. And I just can't stop, like, what is he thinking, right? Like, what's going on in his little brain? Did he wake up and think, oh, shit, I should have been napping in the kitchen about 20 minutes ago? Right? And they get so freaked out, right? I suppose you would have to nap for 20 hours out of the day if you spent at least 1 hour out of every day positive you were about to die. Right? And how long do you gotta live with a cat for him to stop thinking that you're the one who's gonna kill him? Like, to this day, I get home, I walk into my apartment, and my cat's like, you! Takes it. Jesus, man, yes, it's only ever me. And I start to resent it because I think I'm good to that cat, all right? I'm a good cat owner. Like, for example, my cat likes to drink out of the toilet. I always make sure that the toilet is clean. Every time I use it, I not only flush, I clean the bowl, right? And in the morning time, even, I'll drop in a tea bag and let that steep for a little while. Right? And then around midday, right before I do the brush, some Crystal Light and then the brush. And then touch the toilet, right? And then in the evening, I'll pour in a shot of rum and I'll lay a slice of lime right there on the edge, right? I don't know if he can back that in if he wants it, right? And I know what you're thinking, like, that small amount of rum and all that toilet water is very dilute, but he's so tiny, he will get hammered, right? I think he needs it, because they do get freaked out, right? They get so freaked out. In fact, I think that the cat is the only animal in the world who can be in that complete state of sheer terror and have it suddenly occur that it should clean itself, right? Like, your cat can be there, eyes bugging out of his head, heart beating out of his little chest, and all of a sudden... Or worse yet, he cocks up his leg and starts going to town on his crotch, right? I can't figure it out. Sometimes I think my cat must look at me and think, Johnny Harris, I know you're trying to kill me. I'm not going down with dirty balls. I'm Johnny Harris. You guys have been so nice, so nice. Thanks so much.